Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. Today it's my turn to be asking the questions once again. Karthik has just returned from driving the new Kia Seltos.
Well said.
Is it a full toss? In a
No.
word, yes, no?
Not this time.
It's not a full toss. Okay. This is, I think, the first time we're going to be featuring Kia, and we'll discuss the brand itself later. Let's talk about the Seltos first. What's so special about the Seltos?
I think it'll be hard to discuss the Seltos without discussing brand Kia.
So, okay, let's start at the Creta. It's the Creta, right? The Seltos is the Creta.
So they are siblings.
So, what's the big deal?
The big deal, there is a big deal actually, because when we have seen badge engineered cars, Hyundai and Kia showed us how far they could take it, right? Where badge engineering stops being obvious, right? Because I remember when the Seltos came first and then the new gen Creta came.
Right.
So when we had them back then at Zig Wheels, when we had them side by side, we actually spent an hour trying to find something that was the same between the two cars on the outside, right? Which is the easy place, something will be there, door handles, key slots, nothing. Nothing. So these two siblings, so to speak, have taken platform sharing and badge engineering and gone in another direction.
Okay.
So there's always a very direct rival in this case for the Seltos, the Creta. And I think when the Seltos came, it really blew up the segment because it came in delivering styling and interior cabin experience, technology, and a price tag which just was hard to believe at that point in time. If you remember, they came just before BS6 was kicking in, and everybody was making a noise about how cars are going to get more expensive after BS6, right?
Right.
And they came in with BS6 diesel engine, BS6 petrol engines,
Right.
and they brought them in at prices which were competitive from the get-go.
But they had more equipment inside.
Yeah. Right. So they really made a statement with that, saying that they were willing to go above and beyond to make things more valuable. And I think that's what made Kia who they are in India and why Seltos is such a big deal, even though that segment is now so action-packed.
But in sales terms, the Seltos is not Kia's biggest selling car anymore.
In that segment, the Creta is the one that's now leading, but it swings a bit at times also. So I'm not 100% sure about that, but it would also make sense that the Sonnet is doing better.
Okay. So what have they changed in the new Seltos?
What have they changed? Yeah, good question. I don't know where to start really because I'm a little bit underwhelmed by the Seltos.
All right.
Okay. It's not fair to really start off on this note considering it is a facelift, right? But it's Kia, right? They've constantly said that they will surprise us. So you kind of expect.
So you're surprised that they didn't do much?
Yeah, I'm surprised that they did just that much, right? So is it very familiar?
So did you go there and say, is this the Kia Seltos or is it the Ye Kya Kia Seltos?
Ye kya kiya? I keep saying that again and again. Kya kiya, kya kiya.
So kya kiya? What did they do?
Okay, so let's start from the outside. So from the outside, there is a redesign. And that's where was a little bit of dissonance for me because the design has changed. The car is a bit bigger, longer effectively, but that's only down to all the soft parts, right? The bumpers. There's no real change in the sheet metal. So the design is, if you look at it from the side, it'll look the same, except that the chin and the tail are a little bit longer by 25 millimeters or so at both ends. But that's just down to the bumpers being shaped differently. I think that the design has become a bit busy. I think whenever we see evolution of design today, things are becoming cleaner, simpler.
Only in the EVs, no? Because the ICs, they just make them look whatever they look like. But somehow when it comes to an EV, then you can make it look really nice.
I still think that this has more elements for you to take in now. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it just seems to be a reverse trend of sorts. The grille feels massive. It feels very, it has all those, the two different grills actually for the HT line, the GT line, also for the X line. So they feel more, क्या कह सकते हैं, showy. Right?
Okay, so it's become a little bit more like a flaunt the car rather than...
I feel it's shouting a bit more for attention now than it used to. It was more European, I would say, earlier. Now it has more of an aggression about it. Even earlier, it had its elements which made it stand out. And I think that was nice. Now it feels like it's trying to call for attention.
Okay.
And not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a change. A change that I really love are the new alloy wheels.
Okay.
They've got 3 designs now for the HT line. So they've got the Tech line, they've got the GT line, and they've got the X line.
Why don't they just call them the Tech, the GT, and the X? What is this line business?
Yeah.
Why are they line marrowing so much? Even.
Nice.
Okay, I'm sorry. That was a terrible joke. I apologize. So you're talking about the variants, and I was making a joke about the X line, Tech line, and you were explaining the alloy wheels on the 3.
So they've got new alloy wheels, and the designs really look cool.
Okay.
In fact, the funny thing is, amongst all the lines, I personally prefer the HT line, which is the Tech line, the most.
Sorry, which is the bottom model?
The Tech line.
Deck.
Tech.
Line. Oh, sorry. Okay, so Tech is the bottom, then is the X, and then is the HT.
No, Tech, GT.
Oh, Tech, GT, and X.
X is basically sits for a slight premium above the GT line for a few additional features like heads-up display and that matte gray paint.
Right.
So those are those extras that get thrown in there.
Got it.
The HT line or the Tech line is really attractive to me because of 2 things. One is riding on 17-inch wheels, which are way more practical. The others are riding on 18-inch wheels, and the wheels look good. And secondly, you get that tan color interior for the dashboard and the seats, whereas the GT line ends up getting the black interior.
Right.
And even on the X line, you do get a slightly funky olive green kind of interior, but it is a darker color.
Right.
And I think again over there in the X line, what I didn't like were the seats. If you've seen them,
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay. They have this. You know how you see quilting in Bentleys, very discreetly done in a certain pattern. In this, like it's a bit more showy again over here, which is the thing that surprised me about this.
So this thematic of this being a little bit more shouty is really getting under your skin.
Yeah, and which is something that I would not expect from a Kia. You've seen them bring a modern approach, right? Which is to say that, hey, let's do things differently. We don't have to attract attention by doing the traditional kind of things, right? So this, to me, felt a little bit strange.
Interesting. Let's come back to this point. We will definitely bring up this point again. So you said that the 17s on the base model, the middle model, and you like the design, are a more practical choice than the larger wheels on the top model. Why would you say that?
So when you have a smaller rim size, that means the sidewall is taller, which means there's a larger cushion, which is better for dealing with bad roads, preventing punctures or damage to the rim. So it's just more comfort, actual comfort, and comfort in sense of your peace of mind.
But does India have that many bad roads that you have to worry about these things?
Oh, absolutely not. You don't have to worry about that. Go with 20s. What's the problem, right? It's only an off-roader.
You know, they did try the 20s with the Ioniq or something, right? And you didn't like that too much, did you?
Not very much.
Okay. So we've talked about the wheels, we've talked about the exterior. You said the interior, the seats have quilting, not as classy as a Bentley, but it's there, etc. What else has changed? Has there been feature changes on the inside?
I think what Kia did with the first Seltos, they've managed to do that again over here with the facelift. If you were to be shown a picture of the interior of this car, especially the HT line, you could think it's a BMW. The quality of plastics are just plain fantastic. Okay. On the dash, you see that finished satin black. It's not glossy. It's just plain plastic, but it's finished in a satin finish. They have got it down pat. It's beautiful. There's no two ways about it. It's incredible what they managed to pull off. And you look at that and you think like, why can't everybody do
I was just going to ask you, why can't everybody else do this?
I have no idea. I'm sure there's some skill or expertise, but I'm sure Kia's not into plastic manufacturing. Somebody's making it for them.
Sure.
So others should be able to get it as well. But it looks spectacular.
So are you saying that it appears to be that Kia just pays more attention to small details like this than everybody else right now, and that's it?
I think they're willing to pay more attention to detail to these things, and they're willing to pay more. I'm sure it's a cost factor as well.
So you think they're taking less profits out of this car, but keeping the car at a very high standard?
They're taking something out from somewhere, right? And willing to put it in elsewhere. So this cabin experience is something that they've really done very well, even with the smaller Sonnet, right? I think the Sonnet, like you were saying, like it sells more than the Seltos. And I wouldn't be surprised, because it does feel more premium than any of its rivals in that segment, right? It feels like a car that deserves that higher price tag. And it was more expensive than all of its rivals when it came.
Correct.
But nobody batted an eyelid.
Right.
People just...
Yeah, because this is the circular discussion that we have about people saying India is price sensitive, and we're saying no, we are value sensitive. If we can understand that it has more value, then we will be able to bring more money in most cases to that table, right?
And like we spoke in the previous MotorInc First about the Exter, people are not connecting size to price as much.
Especially, I think, top urban for sure, and this is where the trends start, right?
Right. So I think people are happy to spend more if they're getting the experience along with it.
Sure.
So in that sense, the Seltos on the inside, certainly what they've done with the dashboard, there's a redesign. They do have the two 10.25-inch screens now, the infotainment screen and the driver's display. Again, on this, there are smaller things which I would never expect Kia to miss out on. They take every opportunity and build something out of it, right? But the driver's instrument cluster reminds me too much of the Alcazar, right? That's where we've seen that digital display the first time.
That's one of the easiest things to redesign, right? It's just graphics.
So they've got different themes.
Again, this is the car company that rebranded their logo, and everybody on the internet thought it was something called KN Cars, right? So they do slip up here and there, I suppose.
Every once in a while. Yeah.
And I think given how much you appreciate, how much attention to detail they pay, maybe we'll say, chalo, it's okay, you made a mistake. And
so in that chalo, I will add one more chalo in that, is that there's the new control for there are shortcuts for the infotainment and for the air conditioning system. This is dual zone climate control.
Right.
Which is pretty cool for something in this segment. And they have lots of buttons now over there, which is fine. But the fonts used for that, again, so out of character for Kia. You know, they don't fit into that design. They feel clunky.
But okay, are you being more sensitive to the design because the car is such a well-designed thing that all of these little things stand out, or you're just saying...
To me, Kia is a brand that just comes and says, whatever your expectations were with this segment, whatever you thought was okay, we'll do better than that.
Right.
So when they slip up, it feels strange.
Right.
So it is the burden of expectations that they have to carry.
Right.
And I will admit this may be unfair.
No, wait. Yeah? They set the expectation. We didn't wake up one day with the idea that Kia is going to make these fantastically well-detailed out cars, right? They set that expectation. So they built that building. So now somebody's got to go and live in it. Fair enough. I mean, I don't think that's our fault.
So, and looking at what they've done with the plastics, right? You know, they've like literally, like if you showed a picture of this and said this was a luxury car, I would say, yeah, it's fine.
No, because when you were saying large grille, I had already thought of BMW. Then you said the plastics look like BMW. So in some ways, I suppose it fits.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there more space on the interior now?
No. It's the same car on the inside in terms of the space and practicality. So there's no real change.
And it was not an unspacious car to start with.
It's fine. I mean, there are better cars for backseat comfort. Like today, if you were focused on the backseat, it would be easier to be in a Kushaq or a Taigun, because those are spacious for two people in the back. Definitely very good. Seats also more comfortable over there. Hyundai had also, got a little bit of an advantage, an edge over the Seltos when they got the Creta after the Seltos, because of the way they designed the rear seats, which made them more comfortable. And that, for somebody like, for family users, would be an advantage, right? That was a key difference between the two cars, along with a couple of other things back then, which I'd like to point out, because these are things that we experience when we're going to a first drive or when we do the first set of reviews and drives, but things change. So like the one thing I absolutely disliked on the Seltos when it came was the suspension. The ride just did not work for me. It was too bumpy, it was too jarring. And for the longest time, I would tell people like, if you're a family user, you're not worried about, making a statement that much. If you want something that's practical, more comfortable, then the Creta is it, right? It has the better suspension. Also, the Creta had better sound insulation. It also came with the panoramic sunroof, all of which made it feel more spacious and more enjoyable on the inside. And talking about panoramic...
And it's good you brought up only the inside, because the outside, well, you know what the Creta looks like.
Yeah.
Panoramic.
So the panoramic sunroof is the big addition on the Seltos this time around.
So the useless hole in the roof that nobody knows what to do except stick children out of, we now have a double panel roof.
Yeah, it's massive.
Awesome.
Yeah. And because of that, and one of the frustrating talking points is that they have changed some elements of the chassis because of the sunroof.
Right.
They've had to strengthen the chassis, and people always keep complaining about, the 3-star rating or whatever that the Seltos had back then, saying that it should be better. So apparently the chassis has been reworked, but was anybody from Kia willing to talk about it when we were there at the drive? No.
So we don't know if the chassis has become safer or at least maintained the same level even.
It should be at least the same. That I think I would expect that to be maintained.
Right.
But is it better? How is it better? We couldn't get any answers on that front. Of course, 6 airbags and ESP, all of that has become standard now on the Seltos. So the preparation to qualify for a 5-star at Global NCAP's crash test is there, because you have to have these as standard to be able to qualify for that.
Right.
But aside from that, we don't really have any information on whether the cars actually become safer or not.
Interesting.
They say that there's more high-strength steel, etc. We've spoken about this.
Yeah, but it's not a Maruti, so will there be a safety conversation at all?
There is. It's not just this is, I think there are only a few people who are spared from this point in conversation. I think Hyundai and Kia have also suffered from it.
Okay.
I don't know if you know, there was a Seltos that split into two in an accident maybe 3 years ago.
So dual zone air conditioning effectively.
Oh man, come on. It can't be 3 years, but 2 years ago.
I am allowed to make some dark jokes, okay? He doesn't like it, but...
So that's kind of where people went berserk over the safety factor. But like we said, that...
Okay, so the safety question remains outstanding. What we've not discussed is powertrains. Are there any changes to the engine?
Yeah, of course. So the big change on the powertrains is you have now the new Turbo-Petrol, which is the 1.5 liter Turbo-Petrol, which comes with the dual clutch transmission, and which we've seen in the Verna, and Kia themselves have used it already on the car ends earlier.
Okay.
So this is basically that old 1.4 Turbo-Petrol, which has been uprated, so it's more powerful. I think, but the big gains here are that it's smoother, it's just easier to drive, doesn't feel like it has to work that hard to get going, and you think about the GT line and you think about this Turbo-Petrol and you think it's going to be exciting to drive. No, not really. I think the other aspect about this was that Kia could have built the Seltos into a stronger experience to drive, which has not happened. I think sound insulation is something that they could do better. Even this Turbo-Petrol, I could hear it inside the cabin.
So Kia guys, just talk to the guys who did the Verna. They're part of your extended family. They've already figured out how to do it. And the Verna is the same price or lower than the Seltos, I'm assuming.
Yeah, low. So that's what I mean. In terms of your choices, you have lots of choices now. And for people who are constantly, swayed by an SUV just from a comfort standpoint, I'm going to say do yourself a favor, step out of that and look at other options, not just the Seltos, but any other SUV, because you're getting some great options now.
Yeah.
And you should be exploring them before you make a decision, because you're getting incredible value with sedans now, I think, and they're very, very practical as well. In the way it drives, that engine felt extremely usable, extremely practical, but did it wow you? Not really.
Got it.
And I think in terms of the way it drives, the Seltos felt too much of a mix of things. So I was very fortunate. I had the opportunity to drive all 4 cars on offer there. Right?
Very
so
nice.
They had the 1.5 turbo with the DCT. They had the 1.5 turbo with the IMT, the automated clutch, and then the diesel with the 6-speed automatic and with the IMT again.
Right.
So I have very clear recommendations for this. If you're looking at the petrol, then just go for the automatic. Do not get the IMT, because it doesn't make sense unless all you're doing is trying to save money. If you're an enthusiast who wants the Turbo-Petrol, the IMT is not going to give you that experience, because the one thing it doesn't allow, and what you'd want, is engine braking. So when you gear down hard, let's say, to protect the clutch or the engine, it'll actually slip it or prevent the engine from revving up, which gives you that engine braking. So that sense of connection of when you're driving hard isn't that great. And if you gear down too much, right, where the revs will certainly shoot up a lot, it'll actually keep the clutch disengaged, so you'll freewheel,
Got it. Okay.
right? So it doesn't make sense, right? If you're thinking about it from an
So
enthusiast
it's called the
standpoint.
intelligent manual transmission, but it's not a very intelligent choice if you're into manual transmission.
Exactly.
Understood.
So actually, if people wanted a sporty Seltos, what they wanted is a pure manual transmission, which is not available right now.
Oh, there's no manual at all.
No, the only manual transmission that's available is with the naturally aspirated 1.5.
There are cars on the Indian market where all the options are automatic in this kind of a price category.
no,
This is the first time nobody's.
They have a manual transmission, but on the lowest spec petrol engine, which was not available for test drive.
Right.
And which, if you remember, the Verna is the one that I liked a lot with the CVT. So that we've not been able to experience at all.
Right.
So moving on, so we've cleared that up. If you're looking at the turbo-petrol DCT, it is. If you're looking at the diesel, now this is the shocker. The issue with the original Seltos, with the suspension, came back really strong, right? The diesel automatic, maybe it's the weight, the suspension has been tuned differently, and it felt so firm. Like, to me, it clearly became a car that's meant for city use. You will not take this out to places where the roads, you're uncertain of the roads, because the suspension was crashing so much that I stopped once. We were driving outside of Nagpur and it was pouring really badly, and we were on the highway, so I hit a pothole and I didn't think much about it looking at it. And it went talk. I stopped. I thought maybe I've damaged the rim or something.
It sounded that bad.
It was terrible. It was terrible.
Oh God, okay.
So for me, that suspension setup just did not work. But thankfully, that's not the case with the other setups. But there is variation between all the cars in terms of how they're feeling.
Got it, okay.
And I made sure, I actually requested the team from Kia to check tire pressures on the other cars to make sure that the experience is as per what is recommended.
Right.
And with the GT line, with the X line, the pressures were adjusted on 18-inch rims, and there was no issue.
Got it.
Absolutely no issue. It was fine. Overall, I would still say that this is a suspension setup that is not great, not ideal for bad roads.
Understood.
Because you will end up feeling the firmness. So for me, in my head, this as an SUV is an urban SUV, not something that you're looking to really travel with.
Especially the diesel.
Especially the diesel. So in the diesel's case, that's the only instance where I would say, hey, if you have to get this, why don't you go for the IMT instead? Because the IMT setup was a lot better than with the 6-speed automatic.
Understood.
And also, I think the charm of the diesel has kind of worn thin for me, because now with the BS 6.2, the update is now it's got exhaust gas treatment, so it's got the urea and all of that. And I think overall with every step, the efficiency, refinement is also kind of tapering. So the delta that you would have had between buying a diesel and a petrol, unless you're really going to cover a lot of distances, it's not going to be that dramatic.
Understood.
Right? And also the question comes in, if you are going to, would you not want a strong hybrid? Today, you have those options in the market as well.
Yeah, the GV and the UCHY, they're all from this.
UCHY?
I don't understand what's happening, okay? If you're based out of Bangalore, it seems like the names are out of control. Like TVS Apache RTR, 4-valve, XP something. And then Toyota Urban Cruiser Hyryder. This is going on there, right? Yeah. Okay. You said that this car is a mixed bag, which brings us to the brand.
Right.
Kia is just a rebranded Hyundai, right? No, it's a leading question so that you can answer it correctly.
I'm sure there are certain people who are watching this who've fallen off their chair.
No. I'm not asking you the question because I don't know the answer. I'm asking you the question because I'm sure this question has come up before.
Right.
So let's clarify this.
Right.
Hyundai and Kia belong to the same family.
Correct.
But
it's like they say in motorsport, right? The first guy you want to beat is your teammate, right? So that's the same thing for Kia and Hyundai.
Okay.
They are from the same family, Hyundai Motor Group, under which there's Hyundai, and brand Kia. And the one thing that Hyundai wants to do is beat Kia to the punch, and the one thing Kia wants to do is beat Hyundai to it, right?
Oh, the punch and not being the Tata SUV.
No.
Because that word has been taken out of your vocabulary. Because if it becomes the punch, then you don't know what happened next.
No.
Okay, but as a brand, Hyundai to me appears to be a full spectrum brand that does all kinds of products across all kinds of price ranges. Kia seems to me like a more specific kind of brand. Would that be an accurate assumption? To me, those values are more European, more design oriented, more detail oriented, more experience oriented. Not necessarily more expensive always, but definitely offering you a level up in terms of is that
Yeah, that's fair.
But this car, you're saying, now appears to be a little bit more shouty, a little bit more. It's almost wannabe in the way you describe the stitching and the stuff like that. Is that where
Quilting,
this
yeah.
Seltos is going?
I wouldn't call it wannabe, but it seems like it's lost some of its ethos, right? Of taking the higher road, right? It seems to be pandering a bit to maybe what they think as the Indian palate, that making it look more showy. I don't know if that's the right way or that's the right approach. I think consistently we're seeing designs are evolving. I mean, there's a more mature choice that people are making consistently. So even in that, I think the good thing is for lots of buyers, the HT line or the tech line is actually the best balance inside and outside. So in that sense, there is a good option for people to look at, you know, HTX, HTX Plus. You've got nice options there on the inside with the tan colors, and on the outside, it's not as shouty, so it works. So there is a saving grace in all of this, and very kindly, they have provided it in the more accessible line.
So you're basically saying that if you opt for the top model, then you're showing a less European taste in cars, as it were, and Kia is saying, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, I think if Kia were to offer what Porsche does, I mean, instead of offering these a million, like there are 18 different variants to choose from, and I'm sure there'll be more. If they allowed people to configure, you'd find what people really want. And if I were buying the X line, I wouldn't want those green seats with the quilting. I'd want something cleaner, neater. I'd want the brown trim, right? I'd want something more mature, right? Just because I want a cooler looking car doesn't mean I have to get so I don't know what to call it.
Fair enough. Why did Kia suddenly become such a huge success in India? What did they bring to the table?
They took the Hyundai formula and amped it up.
Okay.
So, right, which was to make things look cool, really pack in a lot of features and bring it at an incredible price. So it's solid value. I think they've done that incredibly well, consistently. On top of that, I think they've also managed to build an experience, right? Build richer experiences. Like we spoke about the Seltos, we said about the Sonnet. You know, they managed to change the segment benchmarks as to what is okay, what is premium, what is desirable. They managed to do that. But I think now I would want to see Kia push a little bit harder and further, where the actual driving experience and the experience on the road becomes richer as well.
So you're saying the skin level amping up of what is considered value is a game that Kia's played well. You're almost sounding surprised that Hyundai didn't cotton on to the fact that it's their formula being amped up. If somebody else can, then they should be able to as well.
Kia made Hyundai look stupid when they came in.
Right.
Especially when you compare Alcazar to the Carens. You just think like, how could this happen? How could this come
Are
from
they
the
sisters
same
too?
They are related.
Yeah, because I would never believe that the Alcazar and the Carens are sisters.
You just can't. Especially when you sit inside, you just can't.
Right.
But they are related. And Kia did that consistently. And I think, yeah, they have set high expectations. So now I think the only obvious thing is that we say we want a better driving experience as well. And a more consistent one, I would say, going forward.
So slightly more powerful engines, slightly more engaging transmissions.
I would say better tune for suspension, a more consistent experience across their engine lineups.
Right.
Better sound insulation so that it actually feels more premium. In terms of materials, if things have to be changed, one thing I would immediately change are the door handles, the door release handles, which are very plasticky, obviously good looking, but plasticky. But every time you touch it, you know that's plastic, right? Yeah. So I think small details, small things like that, and which I'm sure some of those things, what they call as running changes. So like I spoke about the Seltos when it came, the suspension was something I just did not like. But over time, they changed it. They fixed it. They didn't tell anybody that they'd done it. So when they changed it to the KN logo, that's when I drove the Seltos again. And I realized that the suspension had been fixed. It was absolutely okay. No complaints.
Right.
So now with this new car, they have changed the tune of the suspension as well. They've gone a bit firmer at the front, a bit softer at the rear.
Okay.
How exactly that plays out between the different engines, I don't know, but the outcome...
We'll figure it out when it comes to the road test.
The outcome is already fairly clear on that. So quite simply, as far as possible, stick to the HT tech line because you get the 17-inch wheels, which is much easier to live with.
Right.
And of course, the interior. And of course, we haven't spoken about ADAS.
Oh, we'll do it in the road
No,
test.
no, there is a reason.
No, there is a reason.
There is a reason.
There is a reason.
The most important thing about the ADAS presentation this time around was the little slide that they put up at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
I've got a picture of it on my phone. We're going to try and get it across. But it basically said in what all instances you should not rely on ADAS, right? And that included lots of finer details. Interestingly, when they gave us the car to drive, the collision warning systems were switched off. They were only to be used when we went to a particular area that they demarcated.
Oh, the demo
test.
area.
Yes. So they are also cognizant of the fact that this is not a foolproof system. And kudos to them for being upfront about it and setting what the boundaries should be. And that, I think, is a very important thing for everybody to remember.
But Kia can do that to a bunch of journalists who hopefully do understand how cars work and why these warnings are important. Do you think their dealership staff is equipped to be able to transfer these warnings to people?
Absolutely not. The dealership is never.
So then what kudos for what? I mean, you're not going to achieve anything. You're telling 32 knowledgeable people.
There's the good thing. Hopefully there's more than 32 knowledgeable people here now watching.
No, I'm saying in that room where they made that presentation.
Yeah, because the good thing is, again, so like heads-up display is a feature you get on the X line.
Right.
You don't want it, don't have to get it, right? And ADAS is on the GTX, right? So you're pretty much going for the top spec variants where you're getting these features. So more often than not, you won't have to spend money on it. And that's my advice. You have the option, skip it. You don't need it. You're getting great variants lower down the price range.
What did you call it? The annoying driver assistance system, right?
I think that's what.
No, because I'll tell you honestly what happened. He was trying to demo an ADAS system on a car to me very recently, and the demo ended up with us nearly getting rear-ended because neither he nor I was expecting a collision warning to go off that late in what looked like it would have been a collision anyway.
And that hard.
Yeah, and it just basically went for it. So it's not a good fun experience.
So I mean, like we've maintained for ADAS, like you have to pick when to use it for all the features. Some of the features are really, like no-brainers. Like let's say blind spot, right? It's not going to intervene in your driving. Right. It's just a flashing light. Yeah. And great, that's superb assistance. Cross-traffic alert for reversing, great. But keep in mind that can also apply your brakes.
Yeah, so anytime the car can take over your throttle or your brake, or both, is when you need to start thinking about how effective is the system and will it add value to your life and not, and whether they've calibrated the system to work in Indian conditions. To give you an example, I have a Ducati Multistrada V4 which has radar, and the radar basically does not work in Indian conditions almost under any conditions. So my previous Multistrada before radar had cruise control. My current one has adaptive cruise, which I just cannot use, and in the process I've lost cruise control as well. Blind spot warnings, yeah, they're useful. But forward radar is just pointless.
Okay, so ADAS, that's cleared up. In terms of features, they've bumped things up, like we spoke about the dual zone climate control with the panoramic sunroof.
This is because when you're sitting in a car with a passenger, there is no physical way to agree at a temperature where both of you will be comfortable. So it's just easier. You know how they say when you get married, you should just have 2 bathrooms so that you can have your toothpaste and toothbrushes in one and your partner can have them in the other. So this is not a source of conflict at all.
So reducing problems for sure.
Sometimes I think most of these car features are first world problems. Like motorcycles don't have issues at all.
100%.
I don't have dual zone or single zone. I have whatever air conditioning God has decided to offer on that day.
The cars is basically you're saying, I want to sit back and don't bother me. That's basically a state of mind over there. With cars, the problem is as much as you can load in, you will. Because nobody's going to say no. I remember when power windows started becoming normal. I was like, why do we need power windows all the time, right? It was not such a big deal. But now imagine getting a car without power windows. You'd be like, whoa.
What are you talking about? Whenever I take an Uber, I have to do this.
Those are the Uber specials.
Oh, the other, yeah, of course. The Desire Tour has wind up, but the
normal car will have it.
Fair, yeah.
So anyways, they've added in features, right? They've made it a better package. And there's an important reason why I'm bringing all this up. Like small details, thoughtful details, which I really appreciate. Like auto up, down, power windows, all four. As standard. Right. Rear disc brakes as standard. So things that people end up looking for quite often. The interesting part is, and this is the last bit, is that Kia has not bumped up the prices significantly. In fact, the base variant, the prices are pretty much the same.
So the value quotient has gone up even further now.
And I think that's also telling about the situation in the segment. It's a competitive segment. And I think this becoming significantly more expensive would have made its appeal lower.
Right.
Right. And it's great that Kia is fighting this hard for this segment and not expecting people to just follow through no matter what the price. This is a great car, great product. And for now, for people who, as I would have said earlier as well, those who want something to make a statement with, this is still a great, great pick.
Right.
Is it the default pick for me? I don't think so. If I could wait, I would wait because of my past experience between the Seltos and the Creta back then to see what Hyundai do with the Creta.
When is it coming, the new Creta?
I think that's going to come next year. So it's not anytime soon.
Right.
So if you're in a hurry, 100%, you've got...
So what else is in this segment? You have the MG Aster, you have the Kushaq and the, what's the Volkswagen again?
Taigun.
Not the Tiguan, the Taigun.
yeah. Don't confuse me.
Then you have the Seltos and the Creta, and the Venue is just below.
Venue is below. But then you have the Grand Vitara
And you have the GV and the Hyryder. Is there anything else coming?
in this segment. Yeah, of course. You've got the Honda coming, the Elevate. That's going to be coming.
Oh, yes, yes. And if you buy a Honda, you will be called an elevator.
And since we're talking about the Elevate, we'll only be doing a first drive of that much later, not anytime soon, because the launch is only in September.
Yeah, so I believe there is a drive happening now or soon.
Sometime.
And we basically said if the car is still 3 months out, we'll just drive it. Then there's no point doing it now.
So yeah, so that's going to be one of the competitors. But what the pricing is of that, we'll only come to know much later. Whereas the pricing is out, and it's quite a. I mean, they've done well to keep the prices where they are at.
So overall, you think it's a good update? You don't like some of the aesthetic choices that they've made in terms of the European subtle classiness versus what this car is doing, but even that is restricted to some of the top variants, so you're okay with that.
Yeah.
And the value quotient has gone up overall.
So with all the nitpicking aside, what you get is a Seltos that's gotten better in some ways. For some people, maybe cooler. Definitely on the inside, they managed to lift up the experience with the plastics and all in place. But have they really lifted the entire driving experience? Have they managed to build a really consistent experience across their lineups? I think that's where things are. There's a little bit of a question mark. And could they have taken it further with this model itself? I think they could have. But hey, it's still a very appealing car for a lot of people. And I get it. Who don't want to wait and want to go in for something.
So final question. This car will eventually come for a road test and we'll do a story on it. Are you looking forward to that experience, or it's not sounding like you're super enthused about testing this car?
The car that I really want to test drive, the variant, is the one that I'm sure that I will not get easily. I want the 1.5 NA with the CVT transmission.
Right.
I want to see how well that does. I want to see how that is, because that will be good value. That will be a sensible option for a lot of people, not having to think about going for an IMT or a 680 or a DCT and having to spend that much. That would be a very sensible pick.
Right.
But it wasn't there at the test drives right now, the journalist test drives. I don't know if it'll come in the fleets. So if any one of you end up getting one, do give us a shout. We'll turn up. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's totally doable.
Really the one I would like to drive. And yeah, aside from that, the thing that I would like to see, like I would like to explore further when we get the cars, is just how much of a benefit is getting a diesel over the petrol today.
Okay.
How much more efficient is it really? Because in what we saw during the test drives then, I was getting about 15 kmpl with the diesel out on the highway.
Sure.
Which is not dramatically high, right? Yeah. And that kind of set that ball rolling, that thought rolling in my head that, is it really worth it now going for that? Or if you're looking for a petrol otherwise and you don't mind spending, going for an HTX Plus or something like that, and just go for the 1.5 turbo.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, those are the questions I'd like
to
answer.
If you notice, he didn't say that he was excited about driving the Seltos. He just said, there's a specific Seltos which I wish I had also gotten to drive, and he didn't get to drive it. Very interesting. Is there anything else you'd like to add about pricing, availability, test drives, when is this car available, etc.?
All of that's already, I mean, it's on sale already. So there's, prices are out. It's in dealerships, so you can go out and drive it. But if you have any more questions, we'd love to hear from you, and that would be fantastic. I think that's the only thing. And yes, if when you drive the diesel automatic, how is your experience? Let me know if and when you do. I really would love to.
All right. That's just about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. This is MotorInc First. It's now also available as an audio-only podcast if you prefer it on all the major podcast platforms, apart from as a video here on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll have more soon.